Okay, I think we're on.
Hello, my name is Kevin Kelly. Welcome to the Coolish Show and Tell. Excuse me, Alexa, stop. And I'm here with Claudia, who is joining us, and Mark,
Hi.
who is not because he has an emergency that he had to run to. So Claudia and I will share our items for this week, and then we'll take questions. Ask anything that you want. You can put them in the chat, and we'll get to as many as we can in our short time. So this won't run more than 15 minutes. And so questions can be about whatever we talk about. Mm-hmm. So Claudia is going to share first. So Claudia, what do you have for us?
Okay, I have, let's see if you can guess what it is.
That looks like a trapeze.
No, it is a flower herb drying rack.
Oh, I would not have guessed that.
So it's made out of driftwood. I bought this on Etsy. I was looking for a dried herb or herb drying rack for my kitchen. But a lot of the ones that I was finding on, I don't know, Pottery Barn or those stores were like circular, and I guess you're supposed to hang them in the middle of your kitchen, but I wanted one that would go up again's my wall.
Right.
But so there's
how does it work? How?
Well, this is driftwood, right? But it has these little metal hanging clips.
Mm-hmm.
So I took all the herbs off because I was gonna, be handling this rough. So I tied the herbs from my garden with twine.
Mm-hmm.
Tied the stems, and then I clipped them to the metal clip.
And then they hang down.
Yes, and so this is hanging up against a wall in my kitchen, and it looks really pretty. And so this lady on Etsy, I'll put her profile in the on the post. She makes lots of things out of driftwood.
Okay.
She makes like jewelry hangers and plant holders, and she lives in Carmel. So I think that's where she gets all the driftwood from.
And the kind of herbs that you are drying are herbs that you would use for cooking.
Yeah, so I have bay leaves and parsley and cilantro and thyme. I mean, I prefer fresh herbs, obviously, but if I ever run out, I'll have a reserve of them.
Sure.
So,
and how long does it take for an herb to dry?
So they're pretty dry now. I think it's been a week and a half or 2 weeks. And you're supposed to keep them. So I put them on the wall farthest from my stove because obviously you don't want moisture, any moisture coming from like when I'm boiling water. But so it's on the wall farthest from my stove. I hope I'm doing it correctly. That's pretty much the only instruction that I found.
Okay.
So I think they're ready to use. It's been 2 weeks, but again, it looks pretty. So I'm not going to touch it. They look really pretty. And I'll use it in case I'm out of fresh herbs.
Okay. And they must smell a little bit too.
At first.
Yeah.
And then I think they lose their smell. Yes. Like the first couple of days, especially because it was hot. Yeah.
Cool.
They smell pretty.
Great. So
what do you have?
So my turn. Yeah. So I have something from my days of travel. I would call it a souvenir, but it seems to be even better than a souvenir. It's very personal. So this is a book, a blank book from Japan. But what's interesting about the book is that it's not bound to one place. It's accordion. And the way this works is Japan, they start the book from our back. This is the back from where we would call the back of the book. It's their front. And what it is a book that pilgrims take when they're hiking, going on a long pilgrimage trail. And when they come to a temple, that's often the destiny or destination for pilgrimage, is to go from temple to temple to temple. And whenever you come to a temple, you take your blank book and you bring it up to the priests, and they have a little ritual where they sign the book and they put stamps of the temple. So there's 3 stamps. Every temple has 3 stamps. There's 2 kind of square ones and 1 circular one in the middle. And they'll make a little inscription. This is like I would call it almost like a poem, or it's like a poem. It's like a little motto, a little saying. And every priest will have their own little style, and they do it. And as you go through the pilgrimage, you collect these, and each one of these represents a different stop, a different monastery.
Cool.
And the idea is that as you go along, people collect them, so to speak. The pilgrims collect them. They want to have, for instance, if these are from a pilgrimage called Shikoku, 88 temples, you want to have 88 of these, meaning you've been to all 88 temples. And in some cases, it's kind of like the first selfie. It's a little bit of a proof that you were there, proof that you made it to the temple because you got the stamps of the temple. Each stamp has their own temples, and it would identify that temple. And then this little signature is kind of like authenticating that you didn't counterfeit it. It's made by a legitimate, authentic priest. But it's also very distinctive because there's a different calligraphy for each place that you visit. Here's one that decided to add the blue.
What kind of ink or pen do they use to?
So they use
Right,
sumi, which is carbon ink. It's black soot, basically from a fire dissolved in some water.
Yeah, it looks really dark.
It's very dark. And then the red is a traditional red, like cinnabar, probably a mercury-based color. And you can see there's a little different character for each of the stops. And this one's very vigorous, kind of, I wouldn't, almost like aggressive in some ways. Whereas another one might be a little bit more, look at that one there. That's sort of,
Yeah.
they were really going with the slants. So there's the personality and the poem and the stamps. And it's a book that is actually.
And so does that book have all 88?
I did not make it to all 88, so
Oh.
no, I didn't. And it's not just the 88 temples. There are other pilgrimages in Japan that will do the same thing. But it is, I mean, these are all hand done. So this is art.
Yeah.
This is a book of art that you accumulate as you walk along the pilgrimage. I'm sure it has a Japanese name, which I forget. But for me, it's one of my treasures because it's just really, really beautiful and very personal because it's my journey. It's you do them in order, so it's my list of the places I went to. And I'm sure if I could read Japanese, I could decipher what the path was. But I wish it'd be really cool if we did that everywhere else. Whenever you went to a place, and in fact, in Japan, every train station and every kind of public place will have a stamp and a pad where you can make your own stamps. At least you can actually. In the days before postcards and stuff, pilgrims and anybody who traveled would stamp their book from whatever stamp. There'd be a stamp and an ink pad by itself, and you could come up and prove that you went to this train station or you've been to that monument, whatever, because there would be a stamp. And that's still true in Japan today. You'll find in a corner somewhere of any kind of public place a stamp and a stamp pad to stamp your book.
Cool.
So As I said earlier, for those who may be joining us late, Mark had an emergency and cannot join us. So it's just Claudia and I sharing on this Coolish. And if we have any questions, we'll take questions right now. And if not, we'll be back in 2 weeks.
Yeah, maybe we can wait a minute. I don't see any questions. But if they pop up later, we can answer them in
email.
Oh, Greg is asking, what is it about stamps that make them so enjoyable?
That is a great question, Greg. You know, there are a couple of kinds of stamps. There's one kind where you are actually doing the stamping. And I think that participatory element is some of the enjoyment. But even if I didn't make the stamp, someone else is. That's a good question. It's kind of magical in some ways when you can immediately cover so much ground with an imprint, an image out of kind of almost nowhere. You know, there's nothing, there's blank, and then suddenly there's an image. Maybe it's that magical moment of appearance, just appearing in full, that we kind of enjoy. And if you have a box full of stamps and you're just doing it, you can make a whole bunch of things appear, and then you can keep changing the orders. So I'm going to guess that it's the magical appearance of the image instantly that I think appeals to us.
I wish you could show your magical potato stamp that you made on your signature, because that was amazing.
So the story is one of the things in Japan and China is everybody, each individual has a red stamp smaller than this that has your name on it and is your official chop, your official signature. And the way that you sign things is not by signing them calligraphy, is you use your chop and make a red stamp. And it can't be counterfeited because each chop is hand carved. So you at some point get your chop, it becomes your official chop. Maybe you have to register it, I don't remember. And you have to sign things by using that red chop. And I was doing some paperwork with China, some contracts for books. And they actually required that we have the red stamp signature block. And I did have an official chop with my name on it, carved in Taiwan, very tiny, accurate, but I couldn't find it. So I decided to I needed one really fast. I decided to make a new stamp. And since it didn't really matter, they just needed to have a red stamp there. I carved one out of a potato. So you can,
and it worked.
And it worked, right? So if you take a fresh potato, the reason why potato is used is that it's very easy to carve, and yet it's stiff enough to actually print. So if you wanted to do some fun things with a kid, you can make rubber stamps using potatoes. Just cut them in half, and then you can carve out the inside with even a dull knife. And I made my own little signature with my initials, making out a little tiny potato, and that worked. And the Chinese accepted it. So that's a survival tip.
I think that's it for now.
Okay. That was fun for us. We'll be back in 2 weeks, hopefully with Mark. We're just showing and telling and opening for questions. So bring your questions next week. Okay.
Bye.
Bye-bye.